Welcome to this video presentation on the M1340 and M1441 Italian medium tanks, vehicles often unfairly dismissed as mobile coffins, yet deserving a more nuanced and positive reappraisal. In the interwar period, Italy's armoured doctrine evolved alongside major powers, emphasizing mobility and rapid attack, paralleling the emerging German blitzkrieg philosophy. Italian strategists recognized the need for a true medium tank to support these tactics, moving away from the obsolete tankette concept and the flawed M1139. The tankette concept of the L3 variants was ideal for policing and suppressing rebels in North African colonized regions. But they were not effective for tank versus tank combat, with no anti-tank capability. The M1139 was Italy's first attempt at a medium tank but proved inadequate. Its main gun was hull-mounted, limiting its effectiveness, and it was quickly outclassed on the battlefield. Up until 1939, Italy had no medium tanks. Italian General Staff quickly realized that the M1139 had to be replaced. The M1340 was designed as a direct replacement, introducing a fully rotating turret with a 47mm long-barreled gun, which was a significant improvement. This gun was highly effective against most British and German tanks of 1940–41, outperforming many contemporaries in armor penetration and versatility, especially with high-explosive rounds. The Cannone der 4732 was originally designed by the Austrian firm Bühler in the early 1930s as a dual-purpose infantry and anti-tank gun. Italy acquired a license to produce this 47mm gun in 1937. As Italy sought to modernize its armored forces before World War II, the Cannone der 4732 was adapted for use on armored vehicles. Ansaldo, an Italian arms manufacturer, modified the gun for tank use by redesigning the recoil system and introducing a new, fully semi-automatic vertical sliding breech block, increasing the rate of fire and making it suitable for turret mounting. This tank version was designated the Cannone der 4732 per Caro M13, specifically intended for the new M1340 medium tank. Production of the M1340, which began in 1940 and ended in late 1941, saw incremental changes across its three main series. Serie 1, Early Production, Basic Features. Serie 2 and 3, Improved Armor Layout, Minor Mechanical Refinements, and Better Crew Protection. Each series aimed to address battlefield feedback, enhancing survivability and operational reliability where possible. The M1441, which began production in 1941, was a direct development of the M1340, featuring a more powerful engine, 145 horsepower versus 125 horsepower. Weight was slightly heavier, and the increase in mobility was only marginal, from 31.8 km per hour to 33 km per hour. The tank had improved, sturdier construction, although armor thickness was similar. Improved air filters were installed for desert conditions. Despite these updates, the M1441 retained many characteristics of its predecessor and suffered from similar limitations, particularly in armor thickness and mechanical reliability in harsh environments. The fundamental design, armament, and armor remained largely unchanged. Both tanks formed the backbone of Italian armored forces in North Africa and the Balkans. In the early years, the M1340's main gun was competitive, and its armor matched many adversaries. However, as Allied tanks improved, especially with the arrival of the Matilda II and later models, the Italian tanks struggled against superior firepower and protection. The Matilda II was a heavily armoured British infantry tank that proved nearly invulnerable to the M1340's 47mm gun except at very close range or from the sides and rear. The Matilda's thick armour, up to 78mm, and powerful 2-pounder gun made it a formidable opponent. Italian tanks often had to rely on artillery or anti-tank guns to counter the Matilda. The Crusader was a British cruiser tank armed with a 2-pounder, 40mm gun. While the Crusader's armor was relatively thin, its speed and mobility allowed it to outmaneuver Italian tanks. The M1340's 47mm gun could penetrate the Crusaders' armor at medium ranges, but the Crusaders' superior speed and tactics often gave it the upper hand in battle. Notably, the M1340 could fire high-explosive shells, which the Crusader initially lacked, giving the Italian tank an edge against infantry and soft targets. By 1942, the Allies began fielding the M3 Lee and Grant and M4 Sherman medium tanks in North Africa. These tanks had significantly thicker armor and more powerful guns, 75mm for the Lee and Grant, 75mm or 76mm for the Sherman. The M1340 and M1441 were outclassed by these new tanks, with their 47mm guns unable to penetrate the frontal armor of the Grant or Sherman except at point-blank range. In contrast, the Allied tanks could easily destroy Italian tanks from a distance. The M1340 and M1441 faced significant operational challenges. Mechanical reliability. Both tanks were prone to breakdowns, especially in the desert's heat and sand. Fine desert sand clogged air filters and engine components, leading to overheating and mechanical failures. Crews had to frequently clean or replace air filters, but standard filters were often inadequate. Improved sand and air filters were added to the design for the M1441 variant, but reliability issues remained. The diesel engines, while less prone to fire, were not robust enough for the tank's weight and the harsh desert environment. Overheating and mechanical breakdowns were common. Logistics. Italy's industrial base struggled to supply spare parts and maintain supply lines in North Africa. The lack of specialized tools, spare parts, and recovery vehicles made field repairs difficult. Many tanks were abandoned after relatively minor breakdowns. Riveted armor was difficult to repair in the field, and damage often required specialized workshops that were rarely available at the front. Crew training. Many Italian tank crews had limited training, further hampering combat effectiveness. It is well documented that crews received only 25 days of training with the tank before combat. The rapid loss of tanks and crew members, combined with the perception of being under-equipped, led to low morale. Many crews resorted to improvisation, such as piling sandbags or spare track links on their tanks for extra protection, though this further reduced mobility and increased maintenance burdens. While often labeled as mobile coffins, the Italian medium tank's reputation overlooks the context of their development. At introduction, the M1340's firepower and armor were comparable to or better than many contemporaries. The tanks reflected Italy's industrial limitations and the rapid evolution of armored warfare, rather than fundamental design incompetence. Construction techniques were not up to the standard of other nations, with the Italians favoring the riveted construction technique, ideal for quick production and easier training for factory workers, but inferior to welding techniques used for armor construction. The tank's widespread service and incremental improvements show a determined effort to adapt and modernize under difficult circumstances. A subsequent variant, the M1542, was produced in 1942, designed to be a stopgap for the later and much heavier P2640. Later redesignated the P40. The Italians moved their tank development forward as quickly as they could. But ultimately, these tanks came too late. The M1340 and M1441 were adequate for their time of introduction and served as critical stepping stones in Italian armored development. Their negative reputation is largely a product of hindsight, judged against later war standards and the overwhelming challenges faced by Italian industry and logistics. When viewed in context, they were pragmatic solutions to Italy's needs and constraints, and their crews displayed notable resilience and bravery in the face of adversity. Thank you for watching, and for reconsidering the legacy of these often misunderstood Italian tanks. Before we end the video, we have a new book release. Discover the fascinating story of Italy's desert armor in Steel Lions of the Desert, the story of the Carro Armato M1340 and M1441. Explore the development, design, specifications, and combat history of these iconic World War II tanks, plus their lasting legacy. Available now on Amazon in both ebook and paperback formats. Grab your copy today.